Welcome back to the National Security Hour. We're talking about Essential Principles, Chapter 8, the final chapter of Unrestricted Warfare with Dr. Liman Yen, our special guest who's bringing some great cultural insights from China, and based on her own expertise in virology and other areas, she's bringing some great insights in terms of what these terms mean. The last couple of terms here, we're going to focus now on the number 6, the minimal consumption. The authors in this book say use the least amount of combat resources sufficient to accomplish the objective. Okay, this sounds like a no-brainer, but there's important aspects here. The principle of minimal consumption is, first of all, that rationality is more important than thrift. The result of a mismatch between measures and objectives is inevitably high consumption and low effectiveness. The line of thought leading out of these difficulties is to use more to attain less. So that is, combine the superiorities of several kinds of combat resources in several kinds of areas to form up a completely new form of combat. Okay, that's a whole different paradigm. So one would think notionally minimal consumption, okay, limit what you're doing. But what they're saying here is no. Mass what you have, but across multiple different resources and asymmetry elements. And therefore, you have minimal consumption, but in a fast time, as Dr. Yin said, flash war. Back to you, Dr. Yin. What's your view on minimal consumption?
So just actually, still my word is, no matter how they try to create the conception, looks very academic or very professional, they cannot cover up their real idea of this whole unrestricted warfare tactics. That is, when they talk about the minimal consumption, that means after all, when they win all the battles, they feel they gain. And the gain, they also have saved some money and they have made more than they expected, and that means they have used minimal consumption. And they don't really care the absolute number or the loss. And actually, their calculation is different, totally different from American side. For American side, actually, we have talked in the previous chapter on this unrestricted warfare. They said the Americans military cares too much about loss of soldiers or civil, ordinary human, right? So they said we should remove this kind of boundaries. And what does it mean? It means as long as CCP has enough human, I mean, they always brag that we have 1.4 billion people, which is almost 5 times of the Americans, right? So these people are very cheap and consumable. So once they could use people's war to compete you, especially when they have the very big disadvantage compared to your cutting edge technology, then using people, they can make it the minimal consumption, because people means nothing. And during pandemic, for example, there is one famous word in CCP's media among the officials that, because they only admit 4,000 people in Wuhan dead of COVID, right? So they said, we celebrate the victory of COVID pandemic because only 4,000 dead. We have 1 billion people in Wuhan. So 4,000 means nothing. So for them, it's compared to minimal consumption because they released the COVID-19 virus and cost at least 18 trillion loss in America. But for them, these are only several thousand or even tens of thousands Chinese people die. That is minimal consumption. They win that case. So that's why their document, their policies, all the propaganda is the East rises and the West falls in the pandemic. So this is their idea. They never care about human lives. And you have to understand the fundamental difference in this case.
Well, so what's really interesting here is when this is why I love your cultural perspective on this, because it helps to highlight when they talk about the principle of minimal consumption is, first of all, that rationality is more important than thrift. So this goes to Dr. Yin's point. Rationality is, if I got 1 billion people and I have to expend half of them, but I win the battle completely, it's worth it. Okay. So more important than thrift. Now, we don't have to think that this may happen, all we have to do is take a look back at the Korean War. Okay, China sent over a couple 100,000 soldiers to their death across the fields instantaneously. It was a small price to pay in their mind, okay, to help the battle and defeat the U.S. and push the U.S. back. Okay, so that's very critically important there. Also, the lack of respect for human life is what people need to understand here is really persistent and pervasive across China and the CCP. When you take a look at, for example, go on X and take a look at some of the different posts I've seen from allies of Dr. Yen and Mr. Liu and such. And what you see is people who are either committing suicide or people who are murdered on the street right next to other people or even literally run over, and no one does anything because there's no value on life in a society where you're so totally subjugated that they understand if you try to do something in this regard here, based on this principle, minimal consumption, you're just another statistic, okay? So if you try to stop the murderer who may be a CCP official, you become another statistic, okay? So it really is an interesting paradigm that people need to pay attention to. The seventh essential principle is multidimensional coordination. Now, this one here, I got a little bit more cognition on my own side because it makes a little sense. Multidimensional coordination, coordinating and allocating all the forces which can be mobilized in the military, and non-military spheres covering an objective. Multidimensional here is another way of saying multiple spheres and multiple forces. So in the United States, we don't necessarily think of that. Okay, we think force and masses, but Army, Navy, Air Force. This, they think civil, military, anything. Okay, the concept of multidimensional, they write, can only be established within the context of a specific objective. Now, Dr. Yen just pointed this out here. Multidimensional coordination. We urgently need to expand our field of vision regarding forces which can be mobilized, in particularly non-military forces. We should also pay particular attention to the employment of intangible strategic resources, such as geographic factors, the role of history, cultural traditions, sense of ethnic identity, dominating, etc. So this runs the gamut of multi-level coordination, dimensional coordination, cultural, social, ethnic, military, non-military. Dr.
Sir, I can't hear that there was some disconnection. Could you?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Every now and then I'm sorry for our listeners. Every now and then we've had a couple different connection issues here with Dr. Yen in today's program. There've been a couple of them. Dr. Yen, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I will. I just want to hear your question again. Sorry.
Oh, but what's your view on multi-dimensional coordination?
Oh, sure. Actually, I think that they just further explain what they're going to leverage the resources and how they will build this kind of campaign series to conduct the cognitive warfare, brainwash people, and prepare for their unrestricted attacks. That could be, for example, let's say now when we are talking about the China should be held accountable for the COVID-19 pandemic, right? What they are doing now. On 7th July, in China, in Boao city of Henan province, Chinese Communist Party held an international, the worldwide influenza conference, and they invite the WHO pandemic, some kind of people in charge of that, for both pandemic of COVID-19 and also the flu, and also many international experts, as well as Chinese military and civil, this kind of bureaus, directors from CDC, Chinese CDC to Chinese CCP, some health community, all not community committees. So altogether, actually, what they're going to promote, one of the topic is very clearly telling what their purpose is. That is, based on experience we gain from anti-COVID pandemic, what can we adopt to the future influenza outbreak and the pandemics, and how could we promote this? And they don't only share the experience, like in China, we have digital that kind of codes to restrict everyone to get all the privacy from people. And also from the concentrated camp, they also will promote that how to write things. Like they teach the students, young scientists, the journalists, how to write things, to let people believe, get convinced that you are doing the good things for their benefits in the next break of pandemic. Brainwash people. How to establish the commercial industry, work with the academic field, and once the benefits are together, they will definitely be planned to let the outbreak pandemic happen and then sell their vaccines or therapeutics, right? And
yes.
How could the expert to affect the public policies in your own countries? And after that, you could be the next Fauci in your countries, right? So altogether, China is promoting this kind of experience. Actually, this is part of multi-dimensional coordination. Once the next bioattack happens, all these people will think about, oh, we can get benefits as we have learned from China. And then they will be willing to join it to coordinate with China. This is the way how CCP to leverage forces in One Belt, One Road, or through United Nations, or through the Wall Street in US, altogether, they try to tie all the people with them, share the common benefits, and they would coordinate with China in Chinese operations.
So what's really interesting here from my perspective, Dr. Yun, is when you give me that perspective and insight, it really is interesting, because what you see here is in their multidimensional approach, China is very proactive, unlike we are in the United States. We're very reactive. They understood the Heritage Foundation was going to come out with this study. They understand different aspects, and people are going to come out and try to push on China for accountability here now 4+ years later, because the propaganda campaigns are slowly wearing off. But they proactively take these measures and efforts to counter the message, to counter the efforts, okay? And they do so knowing full well in Western free nations, we try to lend trust to our partners and neighbors in other countries to try to find the best solutions for things. And so if you have, as Dr. Yin said, taught your students and people to just say the right things, okay, to show that you can trust us and that we love you and we care for you. So okay, it's all deception. It's all deception to bring you into the tent and then to compromise you, okay, to get you to say, oh, no, look, here's what China's trying to do to actually fix the problem. But that's all just smoke and mirrors. It's all just smoke and mirrors. All while they continue, as Dr. Yin and I have talked on this program here, to undertake biological warfare measures against the United States and others. You know, we still haven't figured out what happened to the biological warfare lab in California. What does that central depot or what? That seemed to have disappeared from the radar screen. But I'm bringing it up now because it goes to everything we're talking here in terms of asymmetry, unlimited measured, limited objectives, okay? And you think the synchrony, the flash war of biochem, kinetics, military, logistical infrastructure attacks, okay? This is the type of stuff that would cripple America significantly. If we got into a major war with China, they have the means to significantly cripple us. Even if we do not, they have the same potential means to cripple us based on this unrestricted warfare. And now they have the number of people inside the United States to carry that mission out. We need to be very wide awake in terms of what we have here facing us and the threats we're faced from within. So Dr. Yan, let's go to the 8th and last of the essential principles. Adjustment and control of the entire process. The authors of the book write, during the entire course of war, from start through its progress to its conclusion, continually acquire information, adjust action, and control the situation. Today, with information technology wielding entire world together into a network, there are a number of factors involved in war. It means that the loss of control of any one link can be like the proverbial loss of a horseshoe nail, to which the loss of the entire war. Beyond limits combined war is this use of strange, completely new methods of combat to wage war. So from your perspective, Dr. Yin, adjustment and control of the entire process, the flow of information is critically important. What's your perspective?
So my understanding of this whole part is just one word. Planning is the organization. So that is the key point of the unrestricted warfare and CCP regimes maintains. And that is a key point of what CCP always claim as structural advantage compared to the US democratic structure. So they are established based on the Leninist organization, which is a covered RICO-like criminal espionage organization. And they have their way to tie every part in this organization in a very cruel way to force them to work all together, being loyal and listen to the instruction, work at the same time. That's why they could coordinate, they could be flexible, they could control the situation. And that's what actually all of these tactics, this kind of strategies you want to conduct described in this book based on the Leninist organization. If you cannot control the whole situation, control all the agents and use these agents to leverage the resources of the world, if you cannot let this covered organization amplify everywhere all over the world, if you cannot brainwash people and also strictly control the operators in the whole campaigns, they cannot win. How could they make it omnidirectionally? No, they can't. And how could they make it synchrony? They can't. How could they leverage unlimited measures means to achieve their goal? They can't. So that's why from the top to the bottom, this is Leninist hierarchy structure, and the dictator is the only brain and the only tongue, which you can see clearly now. She is like Chairman Mao, like Stalin, in behaving this role, plays such a role. So we need to know that they also expose their fundamental weakness of all of their tactics and the regime, which is for the Leninist organization, Americans should also limited objective, using unlimited means to destroy the head, the brain, the only tongue of this whole Leninist organization. And then the whole CCP regime will fall apart, and then you again focus on these limited objectives one by one to destroy them. And then that would make sure we won't live in the risks in such insecure future with such a primary monster in front of us, CCP and their allies.
Well, Dr. Yan, thank you very much for joining me again today here. And so I'm going to conclude with a note on the conclusion of the book, where the authors note that although the boundaries between soldiers and non-soldiers have now been broken, and the chasm between warfare and non-warfare nearly filled up, globalization has made the problems interconnected and interlocking. And we must find a key for that. The key should be to open all locks. Now, as Dr. Yan just pointed out, what happens here is we can use every one of these essential principles counter back against the CCP itself, right? So that's why we always love having Dr. Yan on this program. She brings vast experience and knowledge. Don't forget to listen to her program again, The Voice of Dr. Yan, weekends on Saturday and Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm here on the National Security Hour to tell you what you need to know and what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I will go outside of the fog of the daily chaos to give you a strategic perspective on national security issues and speak truth to power, the power of we the people, so we together can best ensure the resilience and security of our republic. Thanks for joining us on the mission. The National Security Hour is the tip of the spear in the epic battle to defend the United States of America.